Welcome once again then folks, of course, to day 2 of Special Projects Pack number 4 for the 4th build this time. A build based on the real-life racing version of the Porsche 959 called the Porsche 961. Of course, they used it for rally and for road racing. This is the road racing version, the more silhouette, like IMSA style racer, whereas the rally build is more jacked up and has the bull bars and stuff. I might do something like that in the future, but for now we're focusing in on the road version. Pretty decent specs. The consensus online seems to be around the 680 horsepower region, 1150 kilos. So it's a pretty hefty machine, and I believe an evolution of this engine was actually carried over into the Porsche 962, which was one hell of a machine, one of my favourite Porsches, so you can definitely tell where this thing's crazy roots really came from and what it led to even in that fantastic platform. So, of course, I'll have flashed up on screen the creator of the livery, or at least to say it's down in the description, and you can jump over to that, add it to your library, show them some love from me, of course. There are multiple versions of the 961 livery, so you don't necessarily have to go for this one, but I like this one. I think it looks good, the colours are good. Then, of course, to jump over to the parts shop, first of all, to show you what you need to fit, I have opted, first of all, in the sports section for, of course, stage 1 weight. For the club sports section, I've got the power restrictor and the ballast, and then, well, of course, stage 2 weight as well, naturally. As far as the semi-racing, you want your crank, the fully customised computer. I've gone for the mid-range turbo. You've got the high range as well, but that gives you too much power, way over 680, and I didn't really want to restrict the car that much, so I opted for the mid-range anyway. Plus, mid-range is very useful anyway, because it gives you that thump, rather than waiting and waiting and waiting for top-end speed on most tracks when you won't need it. As far as the diff, of course, we've gone for the fully customised. The weight reduction stage 3 is applied as well. We've got the polished ports. Anti-lag I actually have fitted, but it's not turned on. So if you don't care about anti-lag, of course if you want to save fuel, then don't turn it on, but if you want even better performance, then fit the anti-lag and turn it on, so I'll leave that down to you. We've got the silencer, the filter, the race intercooler, manifold, pads, and discs. As I always say, doesn't really matter what discs you go for. You could go for slotted, drilled, or carbon ceramics. As far as the centre diff, I would recommend having that. We've got the racing clutch and flywheel, the fully customised suspension, of course the transmission as well, and racing hard tyres. And then for the extreme section, apart from the optional ceramics, there's nothing else that you'll really need there. As far as the livery, of course, we already ran through that, so you can add that very easily to your collection. And then for the actual tuning side of things, obviously I wanted to strike a balance on this one between having really brutally quick performance from what is already a very good car to begin with in the 959, but I wanted it to kind of still feel a bit leery. I wanted it to feel like an old school race car that doesn't just do all of the work for you. And I think it does, so give it a try and see what you think. So, we've got racing hard tyres fitted for the suspension, 80mm. Some people I know don't like having it that low because you'll bottom out sometimes over bumps. If you want it to be a little bit higher, I'll leave it down to you though. I've opted for the lowest though. For the anti-roll, that is on 4, 34 for the compression on our dampers with 43 on the expansion, 3.5 for the frequency on the springs, 3 for camber, 0.30 toe in on the back, 0.20 toe out on the front. As far as the diff, I've opted for 10-10, 30-30 and 30 and 30 again with a 50-50 centre split. Of course, all of this section here for the diff and the split will make a colossal difference to how the car takes corners. So if you don't like this, if you already have a diff setup that you personally prefer for the 959, absolutely change it over. You don't have to stick to everything that I've done. Like I've said before, the whole point of these tunes is to add your own little bit of flair to it. So as far as the transmission, I've opted for 330 kilometers an hour for the auto setting, which is good enough for most circuits. You can quite comfortably get this car up around 200 miles an hour, and most tracks that's good enough. We've got the ballast of 19 degrees, or 19 kilos I should say, added, and then position that all the way to the front. Gives us a nice 41-59 split. Then we've got the ECU on 100, the downforce set as high as it can go. That'll be down to preference and the circuit that you're taking it on, of course. Anti-lag is fitted, like I said, but not turned on, so I'll leave that down to you. Medium turbo, and you can see all the rest as we've already talked about. So all that is left, of course, is to jump out to Road Atlanta and see what it can actually do. Now, in terms of performance, of course, it's brutally quick. I already said it can do up around 200 miles an hour. Even here at Road Atlanta, you can get up there pretty quick. The handling signature on this one, I would say, is more on the heavy side rather than the oversteer side. So I wanted it to be the kind of car that you kind of have to fight with a little bit, wherein it is tremendously quick and tremendously grippy, but you kind of have to roughhouse the car through corners. Throw it into a corner, slam on the brakes, slam on the throttle, really power it through like you are dominating the car, because it's such a vicious animal in terms of its performance. I wanted it to have that kind of personality. So yes, it could be more challenging to newer players perhaps, but it's not the kind of car that's going to necessarily be too difficult to drive for too long, because I think it's fairly predictable. You know, if a car's heavy, you know it's always going to be heavy, and you can account for that. So in terms of performance, it is brutally quick. It's not too high above the 700 point level, so if you did want to use it for, you know, cash grinding, you could potentially do that. You'll have to change the numbers a bit, of course, but otherwise I hope you have a ton of fun with it. We may do the more rally based build for the 959 at some point in the future, but ultimately I hope you had a ton of fun with this one if you did try to use it, of course, and show the creator of the livery some love from me. But I'll see you tomorrow with more special projects, pack 4 builds, and of course check out the others that I've already done. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.